Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the Midday News on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Mukhtar Kasim. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV, Channel 365, and on StarTimes, Channel 276. We begin from the National Assembly, where the Senate leader, Senator Okpeyemi Bamidele, has dismissed report of an alleged attempt to remove Senate President Godswill Akpabio, calling them misleading and designed to create unnecessary tension within the National Assembly. Our correspondent, Topsy Kimba, has the details.
Speaking during plenary, Senator Bamidele clarified that no discussions or plans have taken place among senators regarding Akpabio's removal. He emphasized that the Senate remains united and focused on pressing national matters rather than being distracted by false claims. The clarification came in response to remarks by Senator Oji Ozukalu of Abia North, who had recently referenced previous unsuccessful attempts to impeach the Senate president. Bamidele reaffirmed that there is no intention within the Senate to consider the removal of any of its leadership members, underlining the chamber's cohesion and focus on governance.
He eventually returned the call, and from my discussions with Senator Oji Uzokalu, it was obvious to me that it was quoted out of context. And the reason I'm standing up to make this clarification is that there was no attempt by any of our colleagues here. There was in fact no discussion around the possibility or otherwise of the removal of His Excellency Distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio as President of the Senate. And we are not taking this misinformation for granted, because we know that at this time, it's not only that we are all united behind the leadership of His Excellency Senator Godswill Akpabio as President of the Senate, we are also developing a zero level of tolerance.
Topsy Kimba reporting for Global Television News.
Still talking legislative matters, the House of Representatives, as lawmakers debated two major motions, one on abandoned federal assets worth trillions of naira, and another on the near collapse of Nigeria's once booming rice industry. Lawmakers are raising alarms over what they describe as a monumental economic waste of over 11,800 government buildings and landed properties abandoned across the country, which has been valued at about 20 trillion naira. National Assembly correspondent Aniete Patrick reports.
The motion, sponsored by Minority Leader Kingsley Chinda, pointed to a report by the Nigerian Institute of Quality Surveyors, which found that nearly 63% of federal building projects initiated since independence remain incomplete or deserted. Among the abandoned projects cited are the Federal Secretariat in Ikoyi, the Millennium Tower and National Library in Abuja, and the Cardinal Textile Building, among others.
The House is most humbly urged to set up a special ad hoc committee of the House to review the PIC report conducted in year 2000, as well as verify reports of other properties abandoned since year 2000 in order to identify the state of these properties and report infractions, determine and make recommendations for final resolution.
Lawmakers blame bureaucratic delays and lack of transparency, noting that a committee set up in 2000 to account for government properties has yet to submit its report 25 years later. After debate, the House resolved to set up a special ad hoc committee to verify the status of the properties and review the 2000 Presidential Implementation Committee reports within 6 weeks. In another motion, the House also turned its attention to the collapse of local rice farming and milling, warning that recent import waivers and smuggling are threatening food security and livelihoods. Mohammed Jajere, who sponsored the motion, said the 180-day duty waiver for imported rice has crippled demand for locally produced brands, forcing many mills to shut down. He added that inconsistent policies have discouraged farmers and reversed the gains made under previous administrations.
That frequent changes in government policies have disrupted the agricultural production value chain, making it challenging for farmers to plan for the future. Concerned that if this is not addressed appropriately, the country may be losing billions of naira due to the closure of most of these rice mills.
The House has directed its Committee on Agricultural Production and Services to investigate the matter and report back within 4 weeks. As the probe commences, Nigerians will be watching to see whether these investigations finally translate into accountability and revival of key national assets. From the National Assembly, Anie Patrick, reporting for Global TV News.
In the meantime, Nigeria's border security challenges are back in focus as the Minister of Interior calls for an urgent review of the Immigration Act to strengthen the nation's frontiers. At the inauguration of a House of Representatives ad hoc committee on border security, stakeholders pointed a worrying picture of porous borders and overstretched agencies. Again, National Assembly correspondent Aniete Patrick reports.
The call for tighter border control came from the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, represented by the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, who said the Immigration Act of 2015 no longer meets the realities of modern border threats. He said Nigeria must close security gaps caused by limited personnel, inadequate funding, poor infrastructure, and outdated technology.
There is need for us to develop a national policy on border security that clearly defines the roles of every relevant agency at the border. There is need to create a consistent funding framework for border security.
The Controller General of the Nigerian Immigration Service, Kemi Nandap, told lawmakers that officers are struggling to monitor more than 4,000 kilometers of illegal routes. Military intelligence also raised the alarm as the Chief of Military Intelligence, Major General Aliyu Idris, cited manpower shortages, poor equipment, and judicial bottlenecks as key obstacles to securing Nigerians' borders.
Recommend enhanced surveillance technology, focus on Sahel, and resource allocation, adequate resources and personnel.
Speaking on behalf of the Speaker of the House, Minority Whip Ali Issa said the National Assembly is determined to address the lapses that have made Nigeria's borders gateways for smuggling and irregular migration.
The goal is to identify vulnerabilities, operational shortcomings, and even compromise border officials. You must review how money is allocated to relevant agencies to protect our borders are spent.
Committee Chairman Mohammed Anka assured that the ad hoc committee will develop practical strategies that promote regional cooperation and community engagement to curb cross-border crimes.
It is alarming, that despite significant government expenditure over the past years, we are yet to attain commensurable gains in our security landscape.
With insecurity and economic sabotage linked to porous borders, the push for legislative and institutional reform could mark a turning point for Nigeria's border management system. From the National Assembly, Aniete Patrick, reporting for Global TV News.
Away from the National Assembly, the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Muhammad Ali Pati, has reaffirmed his commitment to strengthening the healthcare system in the country, which will be achieved by advancing localization agenda of the health sector. The minister stated this when he declared open the Annual Review 2025 here in Abuja. Zara'u Nasir has details.
The joint annual review brought together stakeholders in the health sector, medical experts, and professionals with development partners, traditional and religious leaders who gather to discuss progresses, share experiences, and analyze shortcomings to strengthen Nigeria's health system. The Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Muhammad Ali Pati, says the joint annual review provides platform for health sector stakeholders to access health and provide solutions in reshaping health care delivery across the nation.
Bringing Nigeria's health sector to life captures both our collective aspiration and our shared responsibility. The All Hands One Mission theme emphasizes our unity of purpose across all stakeholders: government, national, federal, states, local government partners, private sector, communities, civil society organizations, and our citizens, and the strength of our collaboration in that effort. In a mixed health system such as ours,
the Chairman Health Sector Coalition, Dr. Muhammad Leki, says stakeholders should not only be celebrating budget increases in health sector, but should be able to find a way to get Ministry of Finance to release funds to the health sector and make utilization.
We must find creative ways, work with the civil society organization to get the Federal Ministry of Finance, thank you, Honourable Minister of Finance, welcome here, to get the Federal Ministry of Finance to release funds to the health sector as appropriated. We must not be celebrating increases in budget on papers alone, but releases and utilization.
The event under the theme All Hands One Mission was attended by the Ministers of Finance, Budget, representatives of the Nigeria's Governors Forum, and also the Country Director of the World Bank, among other dignitaries. Zahra Nasser, reporting for Global TV News.
The Nigerian Navy says it will continue to develop strategies to combat security threats such as maritime piracy, insurgency, and other criminal activities along the country's waterways. Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Idi Abbas reiterated this during an operational familiarization visit to the newly established Headquarters Special Operation Command in Makurdi. Felicity Nderi has the details.
The Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Idi Abbas, was received at the flight line of the Tactical Air Command, Makurdi, by Benue State Deputy Governor Dr. Sam Ode and heads of security formations. The naval chief then proceeded to the headquarters of the Special Operations Command, where he was briefed on the status of work and conducted an on-the-spot assessment of progress. Vice Admiral Abbas reaffirmed the Navy's commitment to collaborating with other security agencies and stakeholders in addressing security challenges across the Middle Belt region and the country at large.
This is our newest command and is a very critical and strategic command that I feel should be up and running by now. Though it's young, but it's very critical to our operations. So that's why I chose to come here first. But I believe whatever we're doing is supposed to be a whole of society approach. As you can see, I have my other colleagues from other services and security agencies. As you are aware, I think our production has increased. So we want to take that higher, the number of barrels that have been produced to a higher number. And I think with the use of this technology, we can achieve that.
Deputy Governor Dr. Sam Ode commended the Nigerian Navy for establishing the Special Operations Command, noting that the initiative will enhance the security of Benue's waterways and promote economic development.
Now the Nigerian Navy is consolidating her hold on the territory of Benue, because we need to give the armed forces and the paramilitary the needed encouragement and support so that they can tackle the issue of insecurity, not only in Benue but across the country.
The visit to Makurdi marks the Chief of Naval Staff's first operational tour to any naval base in the country since his appointment.
You are watching the live broadcast of the Midday News. When the Midday News returns, Senate approves 1.15 trillion naira to fund 2025 budget deficit. Details coming shortly, plus foreign and sports stories. On the other side of this break, please stay with us. Welcome back from that break. If you're just tuning in, this is the live broadcast of the Midday News on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Mukhtar Kasim. And now to business news, where the Nigerian Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to raise 1.15 trillion naira from the domestic debt market to finance the unfunded portion of the 2025 budget deficit. Topsy Gimba has the details.
The approval came after the Senate adopted a report from the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt during plenary session. The report highlighted that the 2025 Appropriation Act sets total expenditure at nearly 60 trillion naira, an increase of 5.25 trillion over the initially proposed 54.74 trillion naira. This budget expansion resulted in a deficit of 14.10 trillion naira. Of this, 12.95 trillion naira has already been approved for borrowing, leaving an unfunded gap of approximately 1.15 trillion naira, which the Senate has now authorized to be raised domestically.
Recommendation 1, that the Senate do approve Mr. President's request to establish a 1 trillion 150 billion naira borrowing program in the domestic debt market to close the unfunded deficit gap created by the increase in the budget size over and above the prior approved revenue and borrowing plans. Those in favor of these recommendations say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
In another move, the Senate adopted a motion by Senator Abdul Ningi mandating the Committee on Appropriations to intensify oversight over the implementation of borrowed funds. He said the committee is tasked to ensure that the money is used effectively within the 25 fiscal year and strictly for the intended purposes.
That the Committee of Appropriation should ensure that the borrowing is actually made for the purpose of which is required before the Senate. That the borrowing, the Appropriation Committee should ensure that the borrowing is made for the purposes of which that the Appropriation Committee should ensure that the borrowing is actually to fund the 2025 appropriation.
This decisive legislative action underscores the Senate's commitment to fiscal responsibility and transparency as Nigeria navigates its 2025 budgetary challenges. Topsy Gimba, reporting for Global Television News.
The House of Representatives is taking a hard look at the oil and gas companies accused of shortchanging their host communities. Lawmakers say the firms have failed to remit the mandatory 3% of their annual operating expenditure as required by the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. Aniti Patrick has the details.
The resolution followed a motion raised by Hart Godwin, who said many oil and gas firms are yet to comply with the Host Communities Development Trust Fund provision, a key feature of the Petroleum Industry Act, designed to ensure that all producing communities benefit directly from exploration activities. Under Section 240 of the Act, each oil company is required to contribute 3% of its annual operating expenditure into the fund, while Section 236 mandates that such trusts be incorporated within 12 months of the Act's commencement. But Godwin told the House that several operators have either ignored these provisions or failed to remit the funds, leaving host communities in neglect and hardship.
Mandate the Committee on Host Communities to investigate the failure of regulatory agencies to act decisively.
The House has now directed its Committee on Host Communities to investigate both the oil companies and the regulatory agencies responsible for enforcing compliance and report back within 4 weeks. In a related development, lawmakers also resolved to probe the financial dealings of NNPC LNG Limited. The House Committee on Gas Resources is to examine the operations and remittances of NNPC LNG Limited, a Cayman Islands registered subsidiary of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, amid allegations of unreported financial transactions and possible revenue losses to the federal government. Lawmakers expressed concern over deductions from liquefied natural gas proceeds allegedly made without due authorization or disclosure.
Without a formal notification, disclosure, or approval of the federal government, thereby raising serious concerns of financial improprieties.
Committees are expected to submit their findings within 4 weeks, part of what lawmakers describe as renewed efforts to enforce transparency and accountability in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. From the National Assembly, Aniete Patrick reporting for Global TV News.
And now to news making rounds on the foreign scene. A major cleanup is underway in South Africa's economic capital, Johannesburg, as it gets ready to host the G20 summit on November 22 and 23, with the leaders of the world attending. The makeover is getting reactions from the residents of the sprawling city, dealing with what has been called crumbling infrastructure and chronic mismanagement. Uyi Agbomofuegbe takes it from here.
When G20 leaders touch down in Johannesburg this month, they will be greeted by a city scrubbed, patched, and polished, all parts of a last-minute summit gloss thrown over years of neglect. The urban sprawl of almost 6 million people is home to Africa's richest square mile. In recent years, however, it has sunk into disrepair with open sewers, potholed roads, and crowded shacks of corrugated iron lining its fraying edges. Against this backdrop, these South Africans have deep-seated reservations about the exercise.
We don't even worry about this G20. We know it's very important, they must come, but we are worried about after. What is going to be happening after? They cannot even fix Mandela Bridge.
Mayor of Johannesburg, Dada Moreno, believes the cleanup initiative is long overdue, calling for support to ensure its success.
Today I stand before you with a simple but urgent message that the time to restore Johannesburg's glory has arrived, and we are doing it together. For years our city has carried the weight of urban decay, service delivery backlogs, and eroded public trust. But Johannesburg is too important.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, dismayed by the decay, had called the city's states not pleasing and ordered a cleanup to spare Africa's industry powerhouse global embarrassment. Uyi Agbomofuegbe reporting for Global TV News.
And now to the world of sport, where the Super Eagles of Nigeria have called off their training boycott and have resumed training ahead of today's World Cup playoff match against Gabon in Rabat, Morocco. Team officials confirmed that the pending issues over unpaid allowances had been resolved, allowing full training to resume just hours before the kickoff of the game. The dispute had cast doubt over the team's readiness as he managed only one training session since arriving in Morocco earlier in the week. Still talking sports, the federal government says it is ready to fully implement reforms that will reposition the Nigerian Institute of Sport as a true center of excellence. Director General of the Institute, Dr. Philip Schweib, gave the assurance in Abuja while receiving the report of the NIS Transformation Committee. Aniete Patrick brings us the details.
Dr. Schreiber commended the 32-member committee chaired by the president of the Nigerian Basketball Federation, Engineer Musa Kida, for what he called a live document that will guide the future of sports administration and development in Nigeria. He said under President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, sports must take a central place in national development, creating jobs, engaging the youth, and driving economic diversification.
And the start of the team, we win the basketball tournament for more than 10 years. Amen. That's the start of the team. So I was happy that you said it was the start of the thing. And for me, I saw a team that is going to change the face of sports.
Tribal announced the constitution of a new Implementation Advisory Committee to be led by Engineer Kida to ensure smooth execution of the reform blueprints. He also revealed plans to establish NIS zonal offices across the 36 states to decentralize training and broaden access to sports education.
And I said, well, if we have men like this, then why are they saying Nigeria, in quote, we don't have leaders? We actually have leaders. But I think to harness them to do what is right is what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing now.
In his remarks, committee chairman Engineer Musa Kida expressed optimism that the recommendations, if properly implemented, would reposition the NIS as the continent's leading sports training hub.
Narrative can only start changing when the youth understand what we're doing. And there are many vehicles to that. One of the more important vehicles is the Institute of Sports, where the coaches train the youth, so that's where they get their training from, where the youth are inspired.
The Director General paid tribute to the Institute's past glory, recalling its role in nurturing legends like Emmanuel Okala and other sporting icons. He called on the media and stakeholders to support the reforms, stressing that sports remain a powerful tool for unity and national pride. Anieti Patrick, reporting for Global TV News.
Now that's it on the Midday News. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and on StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen using @GlobalTVNG. I am Mukhtar Kasim, saying a very big thank you for watching.